conversation is going to be held in English because we've got international guests. We are going to discuss the governance in digital age, which is very close to my heart as I work for the Ministry of Digital Affairs and see troubles and obstacles for creating a good governance model every day in my everyday work. I would like to introduce Iddo Moed from Ministry of Foreign Affairs Israel, George Givishvili from the Bitfury company, and also Jakub Lipiński, Jagiellonian club. My first question is, I would like to address the technology governance from the perspective of good practices and already a model already working and in place. And I would like to ask Iddo, what are your what is your experience on how to actually effectively put together a framework for governing technology in very dynamically changing reality?
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you also Impact'18 for having me here. It's a great honor and a pleasure. It's the second time in Poland, and I feel that a lot is developing in a very short period of time. For Israel, technology governance means that it's actually managing one of the most important assets of our economy. About 50% of Israel's export is in technology. So there are a lot of resources focused on developing and managing and governing technology. And basically what we are looking at is several issues. First of all, we are talking about protecting technology, which means that we both use technology to protect Israel, but it's all, in effect, in essence, protecting values. Protecting values meaning enabling growth, social and economic growth. And that is, we implement that by developing quite extensive government policies. So if it's the Bank of Israel, which is developing cybersecurity policies, if it's the Prime Minister's office that manages the National Cyber Directorate, but also in education, science and technology ministries and so on. Then we move on to developing and strengthening our economy, and those programs are actually managed also by several ministries. And the idea is to enable the private sector, the academia and the governments to work together and to create what we very much like to call an ecosystem, where all components are very closely working together, understanding what the goals are. So if you are looking at artificial intelligence, or if you are looking at cybersecurity, the point is to create these kind of programs that will enhance the establishment of cutting-edge solutions. And I'll give you an example. In the southern part of Israel, we have a city of Beersheba, and the government decided to make that city the cyber capital of Israel, which means that the government allocates special resources and encourages companies to settle there. The next is to facilitate cooperation between businesses and between government and businesses by devising special programs which are tailor-made, either in security or in education. We have extensive programs for high school technology education and so on. And last but not least is actually bringing together this dialogue to a level of awareness among the public in Israel, how important it is also to develop the human resources, develop the cooperation of the entire community, so NGOs, and not only the academia and the government and the private sectors are also involved in this. And our experience is that in terms of governance of technology, we are getting quite far. But of course, we are learning as we move, and we are learning from our partners around the world. And so far, we've seen a lot of success in this, but we are not there yet.
Okay, thank you. A very interesting take. We've just started in Poland building such, a framework. We will be looking very carefully at what you do in order to implement the best possible approach. So stay tuned, because it's going to happen a lot in terms of this academia, business and government interconnection space. The second question, the very interesting one, because as I deal with distributed ledgers, among others at the ministry, is the holy grail of the decentralized data processing, the governance. So how do you tackle this challenge in Bitfury? Could you share some thoughts on best ways to do it?
Well, I will just start by saying that we started to work with governments across different regions, primarily Eastern Central Europe, a little bit in Asia, with a product that we have developed, which is called Exonem. It's actually a framework for building private blockchains, which essentially is a solution for creating a network of permission-based or authorized nodes, where every time you enter, you have to have a permission from other network members to get into the system of distributed ledger. And the primary purpose of that is to build trust, because by default, people don't trust each other. Governments don't trust each other. Different institutions don't trust each other. And that's why this type of system creates a good opportunity to eliminate basically any sort of cheating or manipulation with any sort of data. And then people ask, well, but it's a private blockchain, all the nodes are controlled anyway, so there is room for manipulation in any case. But we found a solution for that as well. We basically anchor every so often, every once a month or once a week or once a day, an imprint of the distributed ledger into the public blockchain, like Bitcoin blockchain, for example, where it is stored and it cannot be changed, and it can be validated by hundreds and thousands of nodes in a Bitcoin blockchain. And we've seen a very good response. One of the cases is out of Ukraine, where we recently finished a pilot study with the Ministry of Justice, and they had this auction for selling repossessed property from bankrupt businesses, etc., etc. And they came to us and they said, well, people are complaining that we're cheating. How can you help us? And we said, well, we can just bring transparency and trust into what you do. So if anybody has a question of you not being honest, they can just check any moment at any given point in time what has happened. And we have just completed that pilot several months ago. We'll be coming out with some public information about that so people can learn what this brings to rebuilding this trust, as I said earlier. And we also use it in other areas like public registries, property registries, transactions, etc. That, for example, real estate buy-sell agreements between people, so nobody's trust is sacrificed, basically.
It sounds good. It is a great tool. Trusted data structures to me seem like a perfect tool for bringing something new to the traditional trust we put in people. It's like human-to-machine trust and human-to-institution. So having said that, and considering that in Poland the public, social trust is rather low, it's not that low as the average in the EU, I would say that I really look forward into seeing more and more trusted data structures implemented in our country. And
just to add to one thing to that, when we talk about trust, there was a study recently completed, I think by Deloitte, where they have discovered that 53% of people around the world do not trust their governments. Whether we like it or not, that's a fact. And I think providing tools to solve that is a big opportunity.
This is actually a great introduction to the question I would like to ask to Jakub, because of course from the government perspective trust is key, and there no doubt it is. But how to create trust in government? First you need to, as I stated in my previous panel, you need to let your citizens feel comfortable, feel secure, and then if you feel secure, then you can trust other people, other entities, and so on. So trusted data structures and trust services, this is why they are so important. And I would like to ask you, Jakub, what do you think about governments setting a good example in early implementation of new technologies, because working at the ministry, I deal every day with regulatory uncertainty. That there is some, I mean, with new things there is risk associated. So, what would you say if we challenge our government to set a good example in early implementation of new technologies?
Thank you for having me here. This is a very interesting thing we are now seeing in the blockchain space, where actually we see people doing very interesting experiments in the space of governance, in the space of incentives, in the space of building markets to solve some social challenges. And I believe this is really something revolutionary, and some of that is of course, these are some crazy ideas. But from the government side, what I would like to see is actually more openness and some kind of ability or willingness to understand and to experiment with those new ideas. Because I honestly very much believe that some of those ideas that are being experimented with, that are being created in the blockchain space, can be actually useful in the governance of the state countries as well. And I believe we should experiment early. We of course cannot just move our state country to the blockchain. This would be of course crazy, but there are some small projects that we should start building using all those new ideas from the blockchain space. And I would really love to see it more from the Polish government, because the current examples actually are showing that companies from the blockchain space are moving outside of Poland, and there is not much of this cooperation between governments and Polish state and the blockchain companies.
This may change in the near future, as we launched the GovTech Poland program yesterday, and it is actually an open Gov initiative. So we are going to leverage the creative power of our citizens and entrepreneurs in solving very difficult challenges public administration has. So this program is going to be technology neutral. So there are no selected technologies to be put under our work. So I will welcome the blockchain concept stall to the initiative, and my take to this discussion is probably, as you said, it would be very, very difficult to replace existing legacy stuff with the centralized one, not even mention if it makes sense from the business perspective, but it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible. So in order to streamline the adoption and to facilitate the cooperation with the stakeholders of the innovation ecosystem, we put together at the ministry, a virtual regulatory sandbox. It's going to be an infrastructure for early testing, playing, looking into new technologies, in order to de-risk, in order to create standards while we create services and products, and in order to make a compliance world a little bit better place, because the staying compliant and according to the rules for the startups and entrepreneurs sometimes is difficult. As you've said, some of them looking for some better regulatory environment, more welcoming regulatory framework, they go out of our country and look for other locations. So anything more you guys would like to recommend having, for our country, as we've got the GovTech Poland initiative launched, we've got this digital regulatory sandbox infrastructure, And
This is great to hear. I mean, this is a great initiative, and it's great to hear that we are moving forward with that. And I believe Poland is in this unique position that we actually have such a good technical skills, and we do understand all those new technological stuff. And this is like a new opening in the technology space. So we are actually able to build our own solutions to tackle those new challenges in the governments, and like using this new concepts in solving our own countries. And I'm really looking forward. I would love to see more and more Polish technology being adopted by Polish government.
okay.
If I may touch an issue that was raised earlier about confidence and confidence building. I think this is essential among all the players, the general public, the technologies, the private sector, everybody. And this is something that is quite complicated. And I think that one of the issues that most of us fail to see is the fact that we have to understand the roles of other players. We have to understand that there are many players in this game, not just government, not just private sector. When we are able to address that better, I think we'll all do our jobs in a better way, and we'll have better solutions. And this is something that is a sort of it's a natural thing, but it doesn't speak for itself. We have to be aware of the fact that there are other players. Government is always too slow in creating regulation, legislation, all of that, certainly in technological times, in the digital age. So we have to take the time to understand who else is there and find better ways to incorporate them in getting better solutions.
Okay. Thank you. We are going to do that, definitely. Anything from Bitfury?
Yeah, you mentioned legacy systems previously, and there's usually a challenge of how do you either replace them or substitute them by something new. Well, in our case, that's not necessarily needed. You can continue using the legacy system and just integrate the blockchain part, which links the legacy system with the business logic that's out there. So that's not always necessary as a sort of large investment or upfront cost.
I believe that distributed ledgers can act as a transaction layer to existing infrastructure. So you just put them on top, and they increase the confidence and trust in a service infrastructure. We are going to conclude right now, so thank you guys very much for your inputs. We are going to continue our work for creating a new opening for new technologies and the open dialogue, the open dialogue culture for technology developments. And I would like to see you guys in a year and discussing our results of our efforts of building state as a platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.